Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco dishing on the movies. We are finally watching a horror movie this week and doing a whole week full of horror movies. It's called Peeping Tom and it was released in December of 1961 and it was filmed and made in the UK. The reason why we're just doing horror movies now is because a lot has been going on. I started a reselling business, and we also traveled to Midwest Comic Con in Chicago for starters. After we're done with Horror Week, we will finally be doing Hallmark and Christmas movies. And I've already started watching Hallmark movies because there's so many, and a lot of them are junk. So, the movie Peeping Tom begins with a man filming a woman, well, I should say someone filming a woman on the street in London. It's dark, there's nobody outside but her. I don't know what she is. She's not dressed like a prostitute. She's dressed like somebody who got off work for the day and she's getting a ride home. I don't know. So, or it looks chilly out, so maybe, she's wearing so much clothing because it's cold. So, what happens is she waves the camera person over to where she is standing and asks him or her to follow her. She unlocks a nearby door with the cameraman behind her busily filming her as she proceeds up a flight of stairs. On the way, they pass the landlady, going down. He follows her inside her flat and she shuts the door. The movie camera is still shooting. Now, this is when she takes off her coat and sits on the bed, and then I realize it has to be a man because I believe she's a prostitute, although she still, after she took her coat off, looks like she just got off work. So, as she sits on the bed, the cameraman...
Well, the first thing that she says to him was, "It's gonna cost you this amount of money."
That's right. She says something about money, so that was a big clue.
I don't think you paid attention to the movie, Sophie.
Marco likes to criticize us. We likes reviewing so much. Anyway, the cameraman moves closer and closer to her, and she starts appearing uncomfortable and acts scared. You know that he's filming all this because the screen he looks through is what we look through, with her in view, and it's split into squares. Anyway, she becomes even more scared and begins saying, "No, no." Right away, the scene puts me off because all he's carrying is a camera, right? And she's in her own apartment, which means she knows her surroundings. And she's a prostitute too and meets strange men all the time. So I ask myself, why is she so scared? He's only coming at her with a camera. The thing is that I started watching this movie without seeing a picture of it, watching a trailer, or even reading about it. But if I had read even the briefest explanation of the movie, I would have known that the killer had installed a fold-out bayonet expertly hidden and attached to his camera.
Honestly, I think that one of the things missing from this movie, which I wanted to see, was I think it would have been cool to see how that was built
Mm-hmm.
and made.
Would have been something like in that series about the Unabomber when they showed him putting together the bombs.
No, I was thinking more about Taxi Driver.
I haven't seen that movie.
Because the guy in the movie, he has this contraption that he builds where there's a little gun, and then when he presses something, the gun shoots up his sleeve and then he shoots with it.
Oh my god.
And so I was thinking...
I'm surprised he didn't shoot himself.
Spoiler alert, everyone. It's not a spoiler, it's an old movie, but I was thinking that we'd get to see something like that, like building the thing, or buying the knife, like picking out the knife, something like that, because that would have been cool. that doesn't have anything to do with the main problem with this movie, which is censorship. It's just a problem with the actual story before it got heavily censored.
So, and Marco will be talking a lot more about that because he did quite a bit of research on this movie, and it was actually good that he could find the research about because it is an old, pretty old movie. Well, now it is. So so I understood now why she's so scared because if I'd read about the knife or just seen a picture, I think they showed it on the picture, I would have understood better. But I still didn't understand why she didn't run away. So we find out that who the murderer is really soon. His name is Mark Lewis. He's a quiet, young, and handsome man, and he's played by a German actor, Karl Heinz Bahn, who was the son of conductor Karl Bahn and soprano Thea Linhard. This is just a little interesting movie trivia for all you movie aficionados. Besides killing prostitutes with his magic switchblade movie camera, he has two day jobs, working for a local movie company and for a store owner taking photos of girls who are scantily dressed or maybe even naked. Then the owner sells the photos for a profit. FYI, there is no nudity in this movie.
There's a little bit of nudity.
Well, not
A
just,
little bit.
I don't know where it is, but anyway.
I know, because you weren't paying attention.
Oh, Marco! Before Marco takes over, I just want to mention two other main characters in the movie because there's really just a few, and everybody else is supporting characters and don't have much of a part, and they're just like the filler to main dish. So anyway, Helen Massey plays. That's not right. Okay, I didn't get her first name right. She plays Helen Stevens. And let me see. Let me look really quick. I'm sorry. Anna Massey. She plays Helen Stevens, and she is a neighbor of Mark's, and her mother is Maxine Hecht. And they just put there on the list of actors or cast as Mrs. Stevens. And they both live together, and they're neighbors, like I said, of Mark's. And Anna starred in Frenzy, which was an Alfred Hitchcock thriller, which I believe we reviewed last year.
Yeah.
At this time. Okay, Marco, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. Well, this movie is a classic, and what's funny, this is one of those controversial movies. Like quote controversial, like Joker, Taxi Driver, all these movies were like, oh my god, this movie's really dark and dangerous, and oh, this movie portrays violence in a dangerous way, and then you watch the movie, it's like, oh god, what movies did these people grow up with? Like, are they that dumb that they haven't seen any other movies with actual violence? Like, this movie is like, this movie should have been rated PG. Honestly, this movie, I could have watched this when I was like 5. Like, that's how kiddie this movie is.
Well, there's not even a fight in it.
Yeah, it's very tame. It's very and it's not their fault too. That's the thing that really kills it, is that this movie, it's got a couple of minor issues. Like, I think that in the third act, in the second and third act, like, there's this chunk where it really slows down, but at the same time it gets rushed. And what I mean by that is, like, they'll spend time on these plots that, like, you don't really care about, and they're just kind of conventional, and also it's rushing because it feels like we gotta get to the end. Well, it feels like the main character is rushed in a sense, because of something that happens. And I won't spoil anything, of course, even though this movie is extremely old. But yeah, this movie is very, very tame because it was so censored. And the censorship really hurt this movie from stuck up England. And it's very weird because you have all these other movies that were released in England before this movie that are far more gruesome,
Can
far
you tell them
more
what?
violent.
Can you tell them one as an example?
Horror of Dracula, 1955. That movie literally opens with blood dripping and squirting on a coffin. There's literally only a tiny bit of blood in this movie at the very end. Other than that, there's nothing. Like, that's how kiddie this movie is. That's how, and I'm not like criticizing the movie. I'm criticizing the way that it turned out, where they lost all the footage of the actual gore. They had to go back and reshoot the killing scenes and reshoot scenes just to please these, retarded censors, and so, to make this movie released in theaters. And then when it got released in theaters, it got pulled out for an entirely different reason that's even more retarded. And so this movie is just, it's one of those controversial movies. Like, if I was to make a top 10 fake controversial movies, this would be number one. Because when I was a kid, I heard about this movie, and I thought, ooh, that's got to be like a really dark and disturbing movie. It's called Peeping Tom. And the reason why it's not rated is because it has a lot of nudity and like really lewd stuff and gore and everything. But and then the cover, I mean, they have this great cover that they redid for the very hard to find DVD, and the cover makes it look really dark and edgy too. And then I just watched this movie. It's like, what were they smoking when they thought that this movie's like the most disturbing movie ever made? Because you have Psycho, which came out the same year in 1960. Psycho was a lot bloodier, a lot more disturbing than this movie. They had that shower scene. They had the scene where he's on the stairs and there's a gash across his face, and then we get to because the thing that Psycho did too that was a lot better than this movie was you got to actually hear the sounds of the stabbing, and in this movie that was really lacking. Again, it's because of the censorship. And the reason why I'm talking about that type of thing so much is because this is a slasher movie. You go to slasher movies to see kills. That's the reason slashers exist. It's not that you want to see people get killed. It's just that the kills are what you expect. They're payoffs. They're all individual payoffs to watching these sequences. And then you also have that Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll movie we reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
Is that movie anywhere near as kiddie as this movie? Like, that movie has like that snake dancing scene. It's got the snake killing scene. It's got that like suicide scene near the end. It's got he hits his wife. Like, there's so much more violence in that Dr. Jekyll movie that was released in the same year. What do you think, Safi? Let's have a dialogue here.
Well, I liked the movie, but I did think it was very minimalistic, and which I mean by that, more could have been done with it. And I really did. I kind of thought it was before Marco told me all this information when he did the research. I just thought it was kind of like the person was kind of like going like Alfred Hitchcock, who wouldn't show everything, but would show an eye or show the blood, but not anything indirectly. And
Which is a myth. It's a horror movie myth.
And so but it was more because of the censorship, which is sad. But and also at the beginning, I was mystified about that first prostitute, but then I found out about the knife at the end of the, well, it was like a switchblade, which was weird, attached to. This is like an old camera, and it's really hard to imagine because
Tripods have always existed, Safi.
well, it's
It
a
was
fold out where
it was a part of the tripod. He pulled off the end of the tripod like a switchblade kind of.
right. Well, like it's like a cane that has a thing on the end, and they take
Yeah.
it off, and the knife pops out. So it was kind of like that, but and it was like a it was also like a oh, the thing in battle, the
A bayonet.
bayonet. I'm tired, so it's hard for me to think. So and then in the end,
Do you want to talk about that? It's
yeah,
not
I do.
spoiler shit.
Well, I'm not going to talk it specifically.
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't see any blood, and Marcos disagreed with me, but no matter whether he saw little and I saw none, it was only a little bit, and that's just made the diminish the scene.
Like you know what it was like though.
No.
It was like a kid, or it was maybe a parent wanted to make a horror movie to show to their kids, and so he purposefully made this movie to show his kid, and the movie he purposefully didn't show any violence except for this one little tiny part at the end, at this like this one singular shot. Like that's what this movie felt was that like it was that this was a movie made for kids. This could have been a part of our kids movie month.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't agree with
Yeah,
that.
this was a
You don't
very
you don't watch movies
kiddie
about
movie.
children. Don't watch movies about prostitutes.
Well, they should.
No, they shouldn't.
The prostitute thing is hardly a part of the story.
Well, he goes, but his other second job is to photograph women in scantily dressed outfits.
So
although
what?
it probably,
They don't even focus on. There's no nudity.
well, that's why I said they probably had nudity in the before it was
They did.
sanitized.
They did.
movie.
They
Yeah,
had
okay.
nudity. They have blood. They have violence. But that's what I'm saying. The end product feels as if it's a kids movie, whereas if they had not ruined it by censoring it, then it would have been a masterpiece of horror. Because it still is really good. Like the main actor, he does a really good job. He reminds me a little bit of Peter Lorre because he's very silent and held back, and then there would be these moments where he would just all of a sudden get in a really raging fit. Even if like he's still being nice, he would like get really physical with things and like have to tangle with things, and I don't know how to describe. You just have to see it. And then also the actress from Frenzy, she did a really good job.
She did an excellent job.
Like
She actually had a bigger role in this movie.
and she did a lot better than I would have expected, because of it being like a slasher movie where, well, the female characters are usually there to get killed off.
Well, she had a lot bigger role than in Frenzy, and I think she was younger. She seemed a lot skinnier and younger, and her hair is red. And in Frenzy, I think it was more brown. I don't know, but she just looked a lot younger.
It might have been a wig in
And
Frenzy.
skinnier.
Since it's England, you can always suspect that it might have been a wig.
Yeah.
Because we saw that with the Andy Griffith show. It's not British, but in the Andy Griffith show, the character Helen, like every single season, she would put on a new wig, and it was so weird.
She liked to change her hair a lot,
Yeah.
which that's okay. It's just
But anyways,
being in a small town, that is weird.
with this movie, there were two sequences that I really, really liked. to get into spoilers. The first sequence was, I guess I would say, it's the second kill. That was really cool. And then there's a little scene at the beginning, and I liked when they first met, and I liked that whole origin story, because me and Safi have complained a lot about other movies, like The Stepfather, where they wouldn't show any reasoning or any origin or any motivation. And like some people, they're so backward that they say like, oh, this characters don't need motivations. They don't need any reason for being evil. They can just be evil. That's always the worst. I hate when they do that. And in this movie, they definitely go the opposite route of giving you this clear, very, very creative and creepy backstory. And that was probably another standout part of the movie. Again, I loved the first act, and then some of the second act, and then the last 10 minutes. That's what I loved about this movie. But still, even though I loved it, I still think it was heavily censored and very kiddish. I mean, I would even say Adventures in Babysitting is less of a kid's movie than this movie. That's how kiddie it is.
I disagree with you. I'm sorry. I mean, I understand what you're saying about the violence, about the blood, the appearance of violence, the sexual stuff, the how they took everything out. And Marco said they even reshot all these murder scenes. They
all
shot
the kills
and the end too, right? They probably reshot
everything to
which
not show any violence whatsoever.
I don't understand, and the more I think about it and just talking about it,
Doesn't that make you sick?
Well, I wonder if they had something against him.
I think they did,
because if all these other movies, like you said, what'd you say, the Horror of Dracula?
Horror of Dracula, 1955.
Well, that's
Curse of Frankenstein, 1960, I believe.
And this came out in 1961, so. Of course, it may not have been made in 61. It could have started being made in 60. Because, it takes a little while to make a movie, and I don't think it was made in a week. So, I'm wondering if they didn't have something against this guy for some reason, the director.
They must have, because there's no other reason.
It doesn't make sense to me, and it's almost like they were punishing him.
Yeah.
Which, I've seen that in England.
And basically because Safi, one of the thing that Safi mostly said was this feels like a Hitchcock movie. I disagree. Although Scorsese used this guy to create his movies, I think that this movie has a Scorsese feel to it.
Yeah, and when Marco says this, he means the director, right?
Yeah.
You don't mean the actor, you mean the director.
What actor?
The main actor.
Scorsese is not an actor, he's a director.
I know, but he used this director, although he had some kind of problem with the censor people. He used this same director for his movies because he admired his work.
And if you watch Taxi Driver, actually, Taxi Driver is kind of a soft remake of Peeping Tom. There's a lot of stuff in the movie that reminds me, like the whole thing with the gun that slips up his sleeve, and then there's also a scene in Taxi Driver where he doesn't know how to interact with women, and so he takes this girl on a date to the porno theater, and it's really uncomfortable, and that's what it felt like in this. That's what it reminded me of in this movie when he was showing her the origin story and for her birthday. Like that's really what it reminded me of. And I can see how Scorsese really felt about this movie. He really liked it a lot. And there's a lot of colors in this movie too, a lot of colors. And I felt that was refreshing to see, since I recently reviewed two movies, Doctor Sleep and Peanut Butter Falcon, and both of them suffered a great deal because they took the color out of the movie to make it look, quote, edgier. and that just it ruined them. But with this movie, it was really cool to see all these bright natural colors. What's your
Yeah.
rating, Safi?
Okay, well, uh, I gave it a simple, cheesy baked potato because it was short and simple, and that did interest me and fill me up. Despite that, I find that if they had given the director more latitude instead of pouring a bottle of hand sanitizer on his film, it really would have been much better. By the way, I don't believe there was hand sanitizer invented at the time. Maybe I should change that to a load of white flour, but whatever. I did. I mean, I am giving it a positive review, and I do encourage other people to watch it. It's not that long, and it's interesting, and it's and like Marco talked about the guy, the murderer, his backstory is interesting
Creepy.
and very creative, and it is creepy, and it's not like anything that we've seen before. I don't think like lately. So anyway,
It kind of was. We'll talk about that in spoilers.
okay. Well, what do you think, Marco? What did you rate it?
Well, something else this reminded me of very quickly was Dirty Harry, because in Dirty Harry, the Scorpio killer, there were these long sequences which I loved, where he would be in the sniper rifle aim, the scope, and he would just be watching people do things, and that really reminded me of this movie with the sequences of him just walking around filming people and filming certain things. But I give this rating. I mean, I give this movie. This was kind of tricky because I'm kind of sick this year of rating things, multiple things. Like I wish that I could do some simpler ratings to more explain to better explain, because this movie, although I was thinking one thing at first, which was a little confusing, I quickly came up with. Now, I'm going to preface this. I used to play T-ball as a kid, and after the games, we would frequently get snacks. And by snack, I mean a little container or a little tiny bag of mini cookies. And so we might get mini Oreos, mini Nutter Butters, and many of those. I can't remember what those are, but the ones with one of the seven dwarves on the front, whatever those are. I they're fudge cookies, whatever. And so I would give this movie one mini bag of mini Chips Ahoy with no milk, and they're mini Chips Ahoy. And the reason I do this is because this movie, it feels like it's very constrained.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even though the subject matter is original, creative, and daring, and really horror. I mean, this is a horror. This isn't a horror movie, but it could have been a horror movie if they added the gore and the nudity in. And so,
It didn't have to be a lot, but it could have been a little bit more normal.
well, I
In
mean,
other words, it just looked too like at the end when I didn't think I saw any blood. Marco said he saw a little. That just wasn't. That just was not true.
because you
It's
weren't
not
paying
normal.
attention.
But that was not normal. I mean, I've seen tons of TV crime shows where they went to a scene. I've even read in books, and if somebody gets stabbed, usually or they're shot. There'll be blood splatter, or it would have dripped and it would have spread.
Yeah, but you weren't paying attention. And so with this movie, the Chips Ahoy, another thing is that they're very simple. They're chocolate chip cookies. They're the very basic version of chocolate chip cookies. Safi, stop. And so, and I can clearly see where other cookies came from, like Famous Amos that came after Chips Ahoy, I think. All these other types of chocolate chip cookies that kind of were influenced by this cookie. And so I thought about that. This should be a chocolate chip cookie. Chips Ahoy. Mini Chips Ahoy. And now here's the key. Chips Ahoy are kind of my least favorite chocolate chip cookie, but they're pretty good with milk. But here's the catch. There's no milk. They don't give you any milk, they just give you the cookies. A little bag of crappy mini cookies. Personally, that's a pet peeve of mine, having mini anything. Mini cookies, mini anything. And so there's no milk. And that is the kills in this movie. The kills are the payoffs. You watch horror so that you can see violence and see stuff that you can't see in dramas. Or you don't expect to see a lot of violence in dramas, in comedies, and action movies, a lot of violence. But the kills, there's no milk, and so you don't get the satisfaction of actually dipping cookies in milk and that really tasty taste of the cookies dipped in the milk. And so that's what I give this movie. A bag of mini Chips Ahoy. What do you think of that, Safi? Is that apt?
I suppose so.
Is that an apt rating?
I could have sworn you got a drink too, because I had to bring snacks.
No.
Didn't you get like a look at those
We sometimes
coolers,
some
coolers,
sometimes
coolers?
sometimes we got Capri Suns.
Capri Sun. That's what it is.
And so, but that wouldn't be every game. There would be a lot of games where we would just get a bag of something and then no drink. and it's very, very not satisfying to eat. I mean, especially Chips Ahoy, which are very, very dry. They kind of taste like eating sand. And well, I mean, I'm not trying to say this movie's bad, but I mean that's what it reminds me of. And so now for spoilers, you can go away, Safi, if you want to. Safi
Okay.
has to go to the bathroom.
Okay, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
everybody.
So spoiler alert. One of the things that Safi didn't pay attention to, besides the blood and the prostitute thing and all the other things, is that there's this part in the end where he says specifically, "You've seen my work. Now I'll show you my father's work." And then he plays for her 5 audio rolls, audio things, might have been videos, and reels. And in each of these reels is a little girl screaming. And when he plays each one, he says their name, and he said, little girl, 6, little girl, 4, little girl, 9. And it was like, oh, his father was a killer too. And these are these little girls that he actually killed after I guess the experiments with his son didn't work or something like that. I mean, that was really, really shocking to me. And in particularly, it reminds me of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, of the scene where they're at the asylum. This isn't a spoiler. They're at the asylum and they're listening to these torture tapes. And these tapes, when they listened to them, it reminded me so much of this movie. And so I really appreciate that, how if that was an intended tribute to this movie or just a random tribute that just happened. And so I really like that part. As I said, it really kicked it up a notch in the last 10 minutes when he's explaining to her, and when all the cops are coming, and when he kills himself. I kind of expected for him to kill himself based on hints that he gave, as did Safi. And so Safi didn't even know that those tapes happened. See, you can tell she wasn't paying attention to this part. And then What else? Oh yeah, my favorite part of the whole movie was the second kill, and during the second kill, he basically snuck onto the set that he was working on after hours, and he's working with this stand-in actress, and it's basically like 20 minutes of him trying to kill her, and like doing this quote fake movie scene and shooting the scene with her. And so like she's like, "Can I get warmed up?" And she starts dancing everywhere. He's just standing there, he doesn't know what to do. And then there's this part where she gets behind the camera, and she's filming him and he's filming her, and that whole sequence was incredible. And then he takes out the knife. I started cheering when he took the tripod thing off, and he revealed the knife, because he showed it in full view, and that was cool. And then she was really scared, and I mean, you see a lot of these kind of actresses, they're very pretentious, they like attention, they think a lot of themselves, and that's what this actress was like. She was very realistic, and it was really funny, the whole sequence, and also satisfying, even though then it all gets ruined, because of course you have to cut away. We can't show adults kills because adults can't see that. You have to wait until you're dead to see violence in movies. And so the other sequence I was talking about that I really liked was the morning after he kills the prostitute. He's walking around on the street with this camera, and he's just filming random people, and it felt very authentic, like someone was really going around just shooting random people with this camera. And 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 so but the catch is, this is the only sequence that worked for me. This is another issue I have with the movie, was there wasn't enough of this. I felt like this was the only sequence where when he was doing this and shooting in public impromptu, that this was the only sequence where it really felt authentic. Like all the stuff with him shooting the investigation and everything, none of that felt real to me. It all felt very movie, fake. And so, you have anything to add, Safi, about how you didn't pay attention to? Oh wait, no. Safi can tell you how she thinks that the father killed the mother.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what Marco said because I was in the other room. But
I just talked about the little girls.
oh, so you did say something about, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I I just have a feeling, and I can't shake it away, that he killed his mother. And the reason, there's a few reasons why, and I didn't even what I thought, uh, instead of little girls, I thought that was him as a little boy. Here I was at age 5, here I was at age 6. I don't know, for some reason I misunderstood.
Yeah, she's talking about the little girl part. See, she wasn't paying attention to that part, because he was clearly saying this was a little girl, and I think he was saying their names too, and so it was very explicitly
Well,
little girls that he was killing.
I'm going to have to listen to that part again because
he
I
already
could have sworn
he
that
already
was,
showed her his origin tape. That's what I call it, his origin tape.
which was, and she was very, I mean, she was really a good actress.
Yeah.
And she was very, even if this was a real thing, she was very calm and patient and honest with him, and that's why he probably spared her life. He really thought she cared about him, which I think she did. And but anyway, I thought that his father killed his mother because first, he's talking about how he woke him up all the time when he was a kid, the light shining in his face,
The mirror.
and it
And
scared
the
him.
lizard.
And the lizard on his bedclothes.
And the one part of that tape that was unclear to me was the Peeping Tom part. where and it's funny because we've done this 40-minute long review, but we've never even mentioned Peeping Toms.
Well, the reason why is because it's not like the usual Peeping Tom we hear about. We hear about people, and we actually had this experience in college where we had a Peeping Tom. What they do is they'll look in the window at night.
Well, he did do that. Remember, he kept looking in the
Yeah, but he was
in
in
his
full
window.
view. He
That
didn't
was
even try
really
to hide himself, and that was not what Peeping Toms do. That's right, why they're called peeping, meaning little peeps, like sneaking and looking at the crack underneath the curtains or something. He was just standing right in front of them, like, hey,
that was
everybody, here I am.
that was so hilarious when he would do that. He would just be like, eee.
But I just thought, he had a son come and see his mother's body, and they didn't. All they showed was an arm and like a nightgown, negligee. Not real well. It was a beautiful lacy sleeve.
That was the director's real life wife as well as his real life son, and I love that, the fact that he was able to film that whole origin tape using his real family. That also reminded me of Scorsese, of how he would use his mother in his movies, like in Goodfellas, where all the gangsters have dinner with his actual mother. And that's what it reminded me of, and that was the controversy around this movie, complete dumb. And so, but the thing that confused me was he filmed this couple kissing each other and making out, and then he panned over to the left, and you could see that his son was peeping at them. But very clearly, though.
I didn't understand that either.
I didn't really understand. Like, did he tell him to peep at them?
And he wanted to watch him peep at him.
Was he peeping? Was he peeping already? Because if he wanted to induce fear upon him, it made sense to me. Oh, he's filming him peeping on them because when he sees the camera, then he's gonna know that his father's gonna beat him and abuse him for doing that. That's what I thought.
But I didn't think that, but it was confusing. I didn't understand
why
it
else
at all.
Why else would he film if he didn't want to induce fear?
I don't know. I don't see anything fearful about it. There was nothing fearful in that scene.
In old-fashioned England, you get caught doing something like that, you get beaten and abused for doing that.
Oh.
By your parents.
Well,
the abusers.
But anyway, after his mom died, they showed him visiting her, I guess her body, like like at a wake, like it was in bed, like she just breathed her last breath. And I thought, did he kill his wife? Because after that,
he gets married 6 weeks later.
Well, they show the woman at the beach, and she's smiling, and I'm thinking, did he have an affair with her this entire time?
And he calls her her successor.
He called the little boy, the big boy. He's the big boy now. But he calls the woman her successor.
To me,
6 weeks later, and I thought that was really odd.
It was a very odd word, and they emphasized that word. But to me, it didn't tell me enough explicitly if he did or not, because he should have said something like, "My father was the last person who saw her
alive." Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And I don't know how she died. Like something like that. That would have been. I would have automatically gone, oh.
Yeah, so still though, it bothers me.
Later in the movie, he says, "You've seen my work, and now I'll show you my father's." And so, but anyway, Peeping Tom isn't a very good title either. I mean, it's a good title in my opinion. Eventually it goes with the movie, but still, I think it could have been titled something better. And I also think this is one of those movies that should be remade, because it's not the fact that the movie is bad, but if you could make it nowadays as it was intended to be made, since they can't find the footage, I think that it would be a great service to people all around the world if they remade this movie as it was intended to be.
Yeah.
As well as make a few improvements. Just a few minor ones, like that chunk near the third act was very stale in my opinion. And then some stuff like add in that line, he was the last person who saw her, and stuff like that. Oh yeah, and then the part where they played the audio of the little girls screaming, those all sounded like grown women screaming to me. That was very disappointing to me. I mean, if you want that, because that scene was very effective, it was very creepy, but it would have been really effective if it was actual little girls screaming.
Yeah. I don't know why they couldn't have gotten 5, 3, whatever it was, little girls, just to scream and pay them a little salary for the part in the movie, and that was it.
Oh God, you can't do that, Safi. Adults can't see that. They can't go to an R-rated movie and see that on screen. Oh no, you can't see that. That's too disturbing for adults. Okay, so
I think we should stop now.
our next review will be of Subspecies, the full moon vampire movie. And sorry, but I did not bother going to see Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Well, that starts today, apparently.
I know, so I'm saying I didn't bother to go see it today. And then I also did not bother to go see Charlie's Feminazis. I'll wait until that movie comes out on YouTube, and then I'll watch that just so that I can rant about it for someone who requested it. So, goodbye, everybody!
Bye!